Chapter 17 of Murder in the Gunroom. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Murder in the Gunroom by H. Beam Piper. Chapter 17. When he rose the next morning, Rand noticed something which had escaped his eye when he had gone to bed the night before. His .38 Special, in its shoulder holster, was lying on the dresser. He had not bothered putting it on when he had gone to see Rivers the morning before, and it had lain there all the previous day. He distinctly remembered having moved it shortly after dinner, when he had gone to his room for some notes he had made on the collection. However, between that time and the present, it had managed to flop itself over. The holster was now lying back up. Intrigued by such a remarkable accomplishment in an inanimate object, Rand crossed the room in the dress of nature in which he slept and looked more closely at it, receiving a second and considerably more severe surprise. The revolver in the holster was not his own. It was, to be sure, a .38 Colt Detective Special, and it was in his holster, but it was not the Detective Special he had brought with him from New Belfast. His own gun was of the second type, with the corners rounded off the grip. This one was of the original issue, with the square police positive grip. His own gun had seen hard service. This one was in practically new condition. There's a discrepancy of about 30,000 in the serial numbers. His gun had been loaded in 6 chambers with the standard .158 grain loads. This one was loaded in only 5 with .148 grain mid-range wad cutter loads. Rand stood for some time looking at the revolver. The worst of it was that he couldn't be exactly sure when the substitution had been made. It might have happened at any time between 8 o'clock and 12, when he had gone to bed. He rather suspected that it had been accomplished while he had been in the bathroom, however. Dumping out the 5 rounds in the cylinder, he inspected the changeling carefully. It was, he thought, the revolver Lane Fleming had kept in the drawer of the gunroom desk. There was no obstruction in the 2-inch barrel. The weapon had not been either fired or cleaned recently. The firing pin had not been shortened, the mainspring showed the proper amount of tension, and the mechanism functioned as it should. There was a chance that somebody had made up 5 special hand loads for him, using nitroglycerin instead of powder, but that didn't seem likely, as it would not necessitate a switch of revolvers. There were 4 or 5 other possibilities, all of them disquieting. He would have been a great deal less alarmed if somebody had taken a shot at him. Getting a box of cartridges out of his Gladstone, he filled the cylinder with .158 grain loads. When he went to the bathroom, he took the revolver in his dressing gown pocket. When he dressed, he put on the shoulder holster and pocketed a handful of spare rounds. Anton Varcek was loitering in the hall when he came out. He gave Rand good morning, and fell into step with him as they went toward the stairway. "Colonel Rand, I wish you wouldn't mention this to anybody, but I would like a private talk with you," the Czech said, "after Fred Dunmore has left for the plant. Would that be possible?" "Yes, Mr. Varcek. I'll be in the gunroom all morning, working." They reached the bottom of the stairway, where Gladys was waiting. "Understand," Rand continued, "I never really studied biology. I was exposed to it in school, but at that time I was preoccupied with the so-called social sciences." Varcek took the conversational shift in stride. "Of course," he agreed. "But you are trained in the scientific method of thought. That, at least, is something. When I have opportunity to explain my ideas more fully, I believe you'll be interested in my conclusions." They greeted Gladys and walked with her to the dining room. As usual, Geraldine was absent. Dunmore and Nelda were already at the table, eating in silence. Both of them seemed self-conscious after the pitched battle of the evening before. Rand broke the tension by offering Humphrey Goode in the role of whipping boy. He had no sooner made a remark in derogation of the lawyer than Nelda and her husband broke into a duet of vituperation. In the end, everybody affected to agree that the whole unpleasant scene had been entirely Goode's fault, and a pleasant spirit of mutual cordiality prevailed. Finally, Dunmore got up, wiping his mouth on a napkin. "Well, it's about time to get to work," he said. "We might as well save gas and both use my car. Coming, Anton?" "I'm sorry, Fred, I can't leave yet." I have some notes upstairs I have to get in order. I was working on this new egg powder last evening, and I want to continue the experiments at the plant laboratory. I think I know how we'll be able to cut production costs on it, about 5%. And boy, can we stand that, Dunmore grunted. Well, I'll be seeing you at the plant. Rand waited until Dunmore had left, then went across to the library and up to the gunroom. As soon as he entered the room above, he saw what was wrong. The previous thefts had been masked by substitutions, but whoever had helped himself to one or more of the recent metallic cartridge specimens the night before hadn't bothered with any such precaution, and a pair of vacant screw hooks disclosed the removal. A second look told Rand what had been taken: the little .25 Webley & Scott from the Pollard collection, with the silencer. The pistol trade which had been imposed on him had disquieted him. Now he had no hesitation in admitting to himself he was badly scared. Whoever had taken that little automatic had had only one thought in mind: noiseless and stealthy murder. Very probably with one Colonel Jefferson Davis Rand in mind as the prospective corpse. He sat down at the desk and started typing, at the same time trying to keep the hall door and the head of the spiral stairway under observation. It was an attempt which was responsible for quite a number of typographical errors. Finally, Anton Varcek came in from the hallway, approached the desk, and sat down in an armchair. "Colonel Rand," he began in a low voice, "I have been thinking over a remark you made last evening. Were you serious when you alluded to the possibility that Lane Fleming had been murdered?" "Well, the idea had occurred to me," Rand understated, keeping his right hand close to his left coat lapel. "I take it you have begun to doubt that it was an accident?" "I would doubt a theory that a skilled chemist would accidentally poison himself in his own laboratory," Varcek replied. "I would not, for instance, pour myself a drink from a bottle labeled HNO3, in the belief that it contained vodka. I believe that Lane Fleming should be credited with equal caution about firearms." "Yet you were the first to advance the theory that the shooting had been an accident," Rand pointed out. "I have a strong dislike for firearms." Varcek looked at the pistols on the desk as though they were so many rattlesnakes. "I have always feared an accident, with so many in the house. When I saw him lying dead, with a revolver in his hand, that was my first thought. First thoughts are so often illogical, emotional." "And you didn't consider the possibility of suicide?" "No, absolutely not." The Czech was emphatic. "The idea never occurred to me, then or since. Lane Fleming was not the man to do that. He was deeply religious, much interested in church work, and aside from that, he had no reason to wish to die. His health was excellent, much better than that of many men 20 years his junior. He had no business worries. The company is doing well, we had large government contracts during the war, and no reconversion problems afterward. We now have more orders than we have plant capacity to fill, and Mr. Fleming was consulting with architects about plant expansion. We have been spared any serious labor troubles, and Mr. Fleming's wife was devoted to him, and he to her. He had no family troubles." Rand raised an eyebrow over the last. "No?" he inquired. Varcek flushed. "Please, Colonel Rand, you must not judge by what you have seen since you came here. When Lane Fleming was alive, such scenes as that in the library last evening would have been unthinkable. Now this family is like a ship without a captain. And since you do not think that he shot himself, either deliberately or inadvertently, there remains the alternative that he was shot by somebody else, either deliberately or, very improbably, by inadvertence," Rand said. "I think the latter can be safely disregarded. Let's agree that it was murder, and go on from there." Varcek nodded. "You are investigating it as such?" he asked. "I am appraising and selling this pistol collection," Rand told him wearily. "I am curious about who killed Fleming, of course. For my own protection, I like to know the background of situations in which I am involved. But do you think Humphrey Goode would bring me here to stir up a lot of sleeping dogs that might awake and grab him by the pants seat? Or did you think that uproar in the library last evening was just a prearranged act?" "I had not thought of Humphrey Goode. It was my understanding that Mrs. Fleming brought you here."